Hi, Dr. Geraldine. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you for having me, Danya. It's a pleasure to be here.
I'm so excited that you're here. When I saw you, I was like, oh my God, Dr. Geraldine, I have to grab you because I was at your event last week talking all things anxiety and burnout. But before we get into the insights and all the talks about all of that topic, I would love for you to introduce yourself to our audience today and just tell us a little bit more about who Dr. Geraldine is and what you do.
Excellent. Thank you, Danya. So for the last 22 years, I have spent my time really helping people to get to the bottom, the root cause of anxiety. And a lot of people are diagnosed with depression. And I find that too many people are struggling with overwhelm. And so it was almost a natural thing for me, my work, to lead me into burnout and burnout prevention. The interesting piece about that, after working with people for more than 2 decades, is that most people think, burnout is something that you just wake up with one day and it's there and you cannot do anything about it. But there are signs and symptoms all along the way. Mm-hmm. And it's very easy once you know what to look out for. It's easy to prevent it. And
can you share some of that with us today?
Yes, of course, absolutely. So, first I'd like to share a few statistics. In 2019, the World Health Organization actually labeled burnout as an occupational phenomenon. So it was recognized, this was even before the pandemic, right? But it was recognized as something that was major and that had to be given attention. And, the interesting thing is that Japan and China, they have specific words for death by overwork. And that's how serious this is.
Oh, wow.
Yes. So, just a few statistics. Harvard Business Review stated that annual healthcare spending, this is just in the US, due to workplace burnout, exceeds $125 billion a year. That's just the healthcare stats. Looking at a Gallup report in 2023, burnout costs the global economy an estimated $322 billion in turnover and lost productivity.
Oh, wow. So can you get into more of that? So that last insight, what is that in terms of the taking time off from work, or is that medication, therapy, or is that all combined into one?
Yes. So when we look at the Harvard Business Review, that would be the healthcare costs. So that would be the medication and the health cost involved with it. And then, of course,
therapy
the Gallup
is part of that?
Yes, it would be. And then, of course, the Gallup study would encompass just turnover, right? Just what the global economy is suffering as a result of people ignoring symptoms all along the way. And so, we recognize that work environments either have to step up and be a part of the solution, or they just suffer tremendous financial loss.
Yeah.
And companies recognizing the importance of stepping away from this unsustainable sacrifice to a more sustainable performance, I don't think it's negotiable anymore. It's really a critical conversation.
And now I think more and more companies are actually implementing more health and well-being kind of programs into the organizations, such as mental wellbeing days or apps that are sponsored by the companies that they can utilize for their mental health, that has online counseling that can be done, which is great because they are recognizing the need for that, right?
100%. Absolutely. To me, what's really important is for people to understand that beyond the buzzword, burnout really is a full body dysregulation.
Yeah.
And symptoms are more than just, let's talk about this. It's symptoms that you experience in your physical body. One of the first things that we notice with burnout especially is that anxiety becomes a norm. It's sort of a typical symptom.
Yeah.
And very often anxiety becomes panic attacks.
Yeah.
And that's really a sign that you need to pause and pay attention, like what's going on. The other piece is that when your mood is constantly just bad, and if you're not bad-tempered by nature...
Elaborate on bad.
So, people that are snappy, people that are overreactive. If you ask for help and they just snap at you, and there's no empathy or compassion or just being a good human, if they've lost the ability to be present and focused and consistently are in a bad mood, struggling with themselves, just being angry all the time, that is definitely a sign of burnout.
Even if like somebody doesn't have a job, it still can happen within like at home.
Very much so.
It's not always related to employment,
Very much
right?
so. Very much so. Burnout is, if I could reduce it to this, it's basically overwhelm that goes on for too long. And then it shows up in your body, right? Because all these people that are constantly sick, some people, they just catch a cold or a flu if anyone even whispers the concept around them. Some people are always sick, and their immune system is really taking strain from the stress and the overwhelm. Then there are other people who constantly have headaches or back pain or digestive issues.
Oh my God, is that me? I was literally just talking to you about this. I've constantly got a headache, Dr. Geraldine, I've got a backache.
Yeah. If it goes on for too long and you try different interventions and it doesn't go away, you need to have a look at the possibility of you being in a sustained, overwhelmed condition. And paying attention is going to change everything for you, right? Yeah. And, other people feel stuck, hopeless, helpless, disconnected very often. Too many people feel disconnected from whatever life has to offer, and they just have work and home and work and home, and it's the monotony that they kind of fall into, and then one day they wake up and discover, hey, I've actually been slowly burning out and I didn't even realize it.
And does burnout lead, because obviously you mentioned burnout and then anxiety, they're both connected in a way, but does one lead to another of some sort? Or is it both have a mix, they're kind of the same?
Sustained anxiety very often leads to panic attacks, and very often that leads to, your whole body and mind being overwhelmed, and that is not sustainable. Eventually that does lead to you burning out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good to know. So can you give us a little bit more about the signs of that we need to look out for, as humans, what signs we need to look out for in our body that we can be like, okay, gut, stop and think, okay, I'm burning out. I need to stop, reset, and do something about it.
Yes. So, very often we find people encouraging everyone to talk about what they're going through.
Yeah.
It's not always possible to have the words to speak about what's going on.
It's so hard. It's so hard.
It is indeed, because life is overwhelming and people are busy, and it's really hard to really be able to sit there and say, well, I feel this or I feel that. So I often encourage people to have a look at, really take time out and look at your own body, like drop into yourself and notice what's going on for you. Do you constantly hold your shoulders all scrunched up with tension? Yeah. Or, are you constantly having headaches? Or do you constantly have pain? Do you have tension? Do you have bad digestion? What's going on in your life? You really have to pay attention. Unfortunately, no one's going to come up to you and ask you, hey, any chance that you're burning out? The expectation is that you give your best no matter what. And so, people have to be aware and start learning how to look at themselves. You have to pay attention. You have to be accountable. And I preach this all the time. I love that companies are getting involved. It's really critical. If you're looking at your bottom line financially, you have to take care of your staff and you have to implement policies. But a lot of the time, people are not interested. Employees are not actually buying into policies and culture all the time, right? There's many reasons for that. But when you recognize that giving people tools in their hands to manage their own wellness, whether they're at work or at home, it makes all the difference in the world. And that's why with what I offer, I really offer strategic reset. It's not just about relaxing, because you go back to a stressful environment and then your relaxation's a thing of the past. Starts again, yeah. Bygones, right? But when you recognize that you need to strategically reset your nervous system, I provide tools to help people to do exactly that.
I was just going to say, how do you do that? Like, you provide the tools. So we need to go to Dr. Geraldine for those. And I think employers as well need to start. I'm guessing you work with organizations.
I do.
You train them, you give them talks on
Yes.
how to, I wouldn't say how to avoid burnout, but things that you can do in your daily life to try and not get to that point.
Yes.
And that's great that you do that, because I feel like, especially in this region, a lot of companies are just checking boxes and not actually implementing those solutions.
This is true. There's also a lot of noise in the wellness world that tells you if you just do this, your whole life's going to change. Don't buy into that, right?
No,
Because you want to be aware of what's happening for yourself and what kind of help you need. So the help that I provide is really scientifically based or research backed. And you attended one of my workshops.
I did last
recently.
week. It was amazing. It was the IAB advertising event. It was, honestly, I'm so glad I came to that, because I got so much out of that in just 2 hours. And now I actually stop and pause throughout the day. I do some stretches, I do those exercises, and it just calms me down a bit and just gives me 2 minutes to just say, okay, it's going to be fine. It's just work, or it's just me doing house chores, or I don't need to overstimulate myself over the smallest things. And that has made a big difference in the level of anxiety that I go through every day.
I love it. Thank you, Danya. I only had a half hour that day to share information.
Yes.
And everybody was so pleased that they left with 3 tools to help themselves. It's not about the weekend spa, about the monthly massage. It really is about the ability to reset
On
your
the long
nervous
term.
system between meetings in a day.
Yeah.
And you want to be able to do that for yourself to prevent overwhelm in a day, so that the next day you have more bandwidth to cope.
Yeah.
And, really teaching people how to identify dysregulation in their bodies and empowering them with techniques that very easy, very doable. This is what it's all about, right?
Yeah.
Prevention is definitely better than cure. And if you are already having symptoms, there's a lot of help available. A lot of help available.
And the first is to speak to someone about it.
First, I would say, is to acknowledge that you need help.
Yep.
To me, that's the biggest step.
There's a lot of in denial, right?
Yes.
Like, I'm fine. No, there's just a lot going on this week. There's been a busy week, but then the next week you're feeling the same, and then the next week you're feeling the same. So not being in denial is a huge step, and actually admitting and acknowledging, okay, I need to get some help.
Absolutely. And admitting to yourself is the first step, and then you can start looking for help, whether it is, within your team, from a supervisor or a manager, or professionally. Go and find someone that can help you. Seek medical advice.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need supplements. Sometimes you need to change your diet, change your exercise. The other thing that I love talking about that's so critical with burnout prevention is this concept of consistency versus intensity. Right? So being consistent, 15-minute quietness or even 20-minute exercise every single day is going to go a lot further than a weekend getaway or a weekend 6-hour workout.
2 hours a week of hardcore gym.
Yes, it's that consistency that helps your body regain a sustainable bandwidth. Yes. And so I work with people as individuals to overcome symptoms of burnout. And also work with companies, which I love doing, because there's a whole group of people that leave after a workshop or after a full day's wellness retreat with this amazing gift of vitality again. Understanding that, wow, this was not the end of the road. It's hard, but it's not the end of the road. And so I love what I do.
I love that. And I love what you do for other companies and just in this space as well. I think also what you touched on that I want to continue to talk about a little bit is you train so we have these, although organizations are implementing, the mental well-being and those days off or extra apps that they could utilize, or therapists, or they have masseuses coming in to help you relax throughout the day. Now, that's great, but it also comes down to, so your company culture could be amazing. You can have all these great benefits, not let me rephrase that. It's not company culture. Is the company can provide all these great benefits, but are these employers, these managers, or these leaders lead in an empathetic way for them to understand what the employees are going through? Because you can have the best company, the best benefits, but if you're reporting into someone who is not trained to deal with people, who has just worked their way from being a salesperson to RVP, are they the right people? And if we can recognize that, these people need training, are these the type of things that you work with in terms of companies to train these leaders in management positions to ensure that they are dealing with their employees in the right way, in an empathetic way, in a supportive way? Because sometimes they just don't have a clue.
Yes, that's a big question, Danya. So I'm going to try and answer.
There's a lot of information.
Yes, there is a lot, and a lot to answer too. But, when you recognize that leadership training is not negotiable, empathy is also not negotiable. You need it when you're working with people. One of the things that I do help people with is having meaningful conversations with people at work. I actually teach to ask the right questions so that people can get the right help.
Yeah.
So that is very important. It's really up to management and up to, the company itself to provide that training for people. But again, this is where I always bounce back to personal accountability, right?
Yeah.
Because you're not always going to have a manager or a supervisor that is there for you, that can understand you, that can provide the support you need. So being accountable and not waiting for work to change and saying, well, I need help. Let me go and find that help for myself.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a very important piece. I love that companies are very aware. They are changing policies, culture is changing, conversations are also changing, but recognizing that at the end of the day, when all is said and done, it does come back to personal accountability.
Yeah.
And that's something I do believe very strongly in.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Dr. Geraldine. Is there anything else that you want to add before we wrap up? Just some food for thought for our listeners today.
Well, I think firstly, if anyone would like my support, I do offer talks on many, many topics. My website, www.drgeraldine.com. I also, on LinkedIn, you'll see a few of the workshops that I do and the feedback that I get. I love the feedback that I get from every time I'm with a group of people, because everyone leaves feeling, wow, there's hope. There's hope, and that's something I'd love people to know, that no matter how bad it may seem right now, there is a way that you can work around it. You just need to learn to find the right help. And whether that means...
And acknowledge it first.
Yes, acknowledge it, right? Recognize you need the help and then ask for help. And, sometimes just asking around, someone's going to say, oh, wow, I know someone that can support you. I know someone
Word
that
of
can
mouth
help
is
you.
huge, yeah.
Yes. And, I'm terrible on social media because all my work is through word of mouth referral. So, again, just ask around and you'll definitely find the help that you need.
Thank you so much for your insights and for joining us today. It was an absolute pleasure to talk about this topic. I've really enjoyed it, and I hope our listeners today have also enjoyed it. Thank you so much, Dr. Geraldine.
Thank you, Donna. You've been a star.